So we're going to do some pages in this Waiting on a Cowboy, Jennifer Ryan. It's a McGrath novel. Let me read the back to you like we always do. Meet the New York Times best-selling author Jennifer Ryan's McGraths, a family as untamed as the land they call home. Tate McGrath just didn't get it. Why was Liz Scott, his best friend and the person he relied on and trusted most, suddenly avoiding him? When he finally tracks her down, he finds her with a man he knows nothing about, and she's been dating him for weeks. Suddenly he can't make himself ignore her tempting curves and deep green eyes. I have green eyes, just saying. And all he wants to do is keep her all to himself. What was going on? Could he possibly be jealous? Liz had made the decision, stop carrying a torch for Tate and find a guy who wants to be her everything. Tate had always seen her as the honest, dependable, smart, kind, best friend, not girlfriend. And she needed to give up the dream of marrying the man she loved since preschool and move on. But when Liz's boyfriend turns dangerous, Tate steps up to help and soon realizes he's the cowboy hero she's been waiting for him to be all along. Oh yes, a nice sunny ending to a wrong book. Now we're going to read the little preface to give you an idea of how hot and steamy it is, because there's a lot of passion in this book. Starts off very slow, but there's a lot of passion. I think if we gave it a try, we could be great together. Those words barely penetrated before his lips settled on hers. His arms went around her back and pulled her close. She fisted her hands in his shirt and held on because she seriously thought her legs would give out from the tremble of need that shook through her. His tongue swept across her bottom lip, and she stopped thinking about anything but tasting him. She opened her mouth, and he dove in. Sweeping his tongue along hers, he did so with a skill that curled her toes, but also carried a hint of hesitancy. Like he wasn't sure, or maybe like her. It felt so new and wondrous. He needed a second to settle into it. Damn, sweetheart, I should have kissed you forever ago. And I almost dropped the book with that much passion. Okay, now what drove me to want to read this book? Well, I always like to read the notes from the author to get a deeper sense of the book. And this note said, read it, Donna, and I'll tell you why. For those waiting on love, I hope you find it. Perhaps it's been right in front of you all along, and all you need to do is open up your heart to the possibility. And I thought, okay, I've got to read that. Okay. That being said, let's see here if I can turn the page. Waiting on a Cowboy. Now, I'm going to read you the prologue, which is a whole page. Okay, back in the day, the kindergarten playground. Hey, lizard, I'll trade you my grapes for one of your chocolate chip cookies. Stop calling me that. Tate sat next to Liz, rolled his eyes, and stuck his tongue out at her because she told him all the time, and he ignored her all the time. Liz handed over the cookie and popped one of his grapes into her mouth. She'd rather have the cookie, but didn't mind sharing with Tate, even if he did call her names. He didn't mean it. He was just weird. But she liked him. He always picked her to play a game, let her ride the pony at his birthday party before anyone else, and always sat with her to paint during free time at lunch. And she liked that. Daddy picked Mama to do everything with him, too. Tate stuffed the whole cookie in his mouth and Liz announced, I'm going to marry you. Tate stopped chewing and stared at her. Nuh-uh. Yes, I am. He shook his head. Nuh-uh. She smiled confident. She knew better. You'll see. What a sweet start to this book. But we start in a situation. I've got to try and give you a synopsis because I did not mark the first few pages. Where they're all grown up, mostly. And Declan, which is the brother to Tate, they walk into this bar, and he sees Liz there with some man. Now, the man and him don't get along, needless to say, and That's when Liz starts realizing and telling him that he's now going to take second place to this new man in her life, and Tate doesn't take too fondly to that. So, he's wanting to know what's going on, and it festers into this. She tries to tell Tate she's with Clint now, and Clint, he's very possessive, he's very abusive with Liz, but she doesn't see that until he starts becoming like physically abusive, not just mentally abusive. So it brought back some bad memories for me from past relationship, but the good part is where we're going to start at page 145. This tells you right here how people with evil intentions can get involved in your relationship and make it go south quickly. And it may not even be that person that you think it is. With that being said, page 145. She texted Tate, excited to check in with him now that they were a couple, and was ready to make plans. Liz, what do you want to do tonight? About to set her phone down, she turned it over when it dinged immediately. Surprised, Tate got back to her so fast when he said he'd be out of cell phone range most of the afternoon, checking on the herds in the farthest part of the property. She read his response. Tate first said, staying home tonight. Then again, he was quick to respond, maybe we jumped the gun on this thing. Then again, it's just not there for me. Then again, I can't give you what you want. Tears pricked her eyes and clogged her throat. She blinked them away when Pat set a tray with her food in front of her. Can I get you anything else? No, thank you, I'm good. Far from it. Her heart ached, her stomach pinched, but she swallowed back the cry of agony and the tears clogged her throat. How could Tate do this to her? Why? Over the text message? Why would he break things off when everything seemed fine last night? It didn't make sense. Tate, I think we should stay away from each other for a while. He kissed her last night like he couldn't get enough of her. Yes, he pulled back before things went too far, but that's because they slightly agreed to what? What were they waiting for? The right time so they could get to know each other better? They knew each other better than anyone else knew them. They were made for each other. They were meant for each other. But Tate didn't think so. He wanted out. He didn't want to see her. A tear slipped down her cheek just as someone brushed their finger through her hair and pushed it behind her ear. Her head shot up and she gasped. I hate to see you so sad. Clint stared down at her with concern in his eyes. Are you okay? She drew herself up and away from him. I'm fine. She glanced around at the crowded deli. What are you doing here? Lunch. The obvious answer didn't sound like a lie, but it made her hesitate and question his motives after catching him lurking and stalking her at the farmer's market outside the restaurant where she and Tate ate Monday night. Thank you for your concern, but I'm fine. Listen, things between us got screwed up. What sounded like genuine remorse filled those words. I'm so sorry about that. I'd like to help if I can, even if it's just to listen. He didn't wait for her agreement and sat down across from her. Eat, babe. You'll feel better. She didn't want food. She wanted to go back 10 minutes ago when she thought she and Tate had a future filled with Instagram posts of their engagement, wedding, and babies. She wanted Clint to leave so she could think and try to understand what made Tate do this and why now. Come on, it can't be that bad. It devastated her. Tate broke up with me. Clint leaned in, his arms crossed on the table. He's an idiot for letting you go. She slumped in her chair and fought tears again. Thanks. She appreciated the sentiment, even if it did come from him. It's how I felt after screwing things up with you. I don't know what got into me. Seeing you with him, I should have handled things better. The sincerity in his voice sounded real, but she had a hard time believing him. I should have trusted you more. In her mind, you either trusted someone or not. I should have believed you wanted to be with me and not that friendship with him didn't mean you were not committing to our relationship. This was the Clint she remembered. Open, easygoing, the guy she liked and fell for it all before it went bad. She should have realized that Clint, side note, was doing this for his own good, not for hers, because he's an evil man. But back to the story. She couldn't put the blame all on him. She had one foot out the door the whole time wishing for Tate, Her heart had always belonged to him and doomed all her other relationships. Well, she and Tate had tried, and her fears came true. He really didn't want her. He warned her that her questioning his true intentions might drive a wedge between them, but in the end he realized his feelings didn't run that deep. Fooling around, spending time together, didn't amount to more than a good time, not good enough to make him want to build a life with her. Clint's hands settled over hers. Listen, babe, let me brighten your day. I'll take you out for drinks, maybe some dancing, and we'll have some fun and laugh, and you'll forget all about what's his name. Clint gave her a coaxing smile. The last thing she wanted to do was repeat her past mistakes, and right now, a quiet night at home with a good book or even a movie, her favorite blanket, and a gallon of Rocky Road sounded like a plan that she could get behind. Thank you for your concern in the offer, but I think I'll head home after work and take some time to myself. Clint patted her hand. Another time, then. I really would like to make things up to you. I'm not that guy, Liz. I hope you know that. To keep the peace and to put it in her past, she said, let's just forget it. He smiled and spread his genuine glee. I knew you would not hold it against me. You're kind, Liz. You see the good in people. Clint glanced around the room and then focused on her again. If you're sure you're okay, I'll leave you to eat your lunch, but I hope that we can get together soon. She didn't want to ruin the mood by ending yet another encounter with Clint by shooting him down and making him well upset. She preferred him reasonable and nice. She'd never forget that he turned on her. I'll be okay. She couldn't help but look down at her phone and think about Tate and how he ended things, and wondered what might have been. Haven't you spent enough time waiting for him? Did she read a hint of bitterness in that question, or was that her own sour heartbreak? She waited forever for Tate to come so close and have him, and end it like this felt so inconsiderate and callous. He had to know that she would be devastated. After all they shared, that breakup seemed so impersonal. Clint leaned down and kissed her on the head. When you're ready, call me. I'll be waiting for you. His hand slid across her shoulder as he walked away, and for a split second, knowing someone was waiting for her felt damn good, but the fleeting moment didn't last because it was not the right person waiting for her. She pushed her phone away, picked up the sandwich, and took a bite. She had lost her appetite, but the first bite tasted good and helped ease the tension. A woman walked toward her and planted her hand on the table and leaned down. Whatever he said to you, he's lying. Don't trust him. Don't let him into your life. He'll destroy it. The certainty and the force in those words made the hairs on the back of Liz's neck stand up. Liz set her sandwich back in the basket and stared up at the pretty brunette. Who are you? Someone who's been where you are now. Clint and I used to work together. He made me think he loved me, and soon I didn't have any friends. I didn't see my family. I did everything he wanted just to make him happy. My whole life became about keeping the peace. Arguments turned into fights. A rough grab here and there turned into... Choked up, the woman couldn't even speak, but Liz got the picture. When I tried to leave, he talked back to me, and when that didn't work, he tried to force me into being sure that I had nowhere to go. He sent everyone at work a video he took of me with someone, and I thought it was only for him, and it was supposed to be private. Tears filled her eyes, and the devastation she suffered as so clear to see. Whatever you think he is, he's not. He is a monster. The woman ran past her and out the shop door. Liz fell back in her seat and raked her fingers through her hair. That poor woman. Clint put her through hell. Liz had gotten a glimpse of Clint's temper and didn't want another up-close look. She appreciated his attempt to be nice to her today, but that did not excuse how he treated her in the past. It did not erase the memory of panic she felt when he grabbed her, and she feared that he would do a lot worse. Taking a private moment between a couple, recording it and sending it to others, how downright mean and vindictive. Did Clint really think embarrassing and humiliating would make her want to be with him? That's not how you love someone. That's how you terrorize them and make them fear and hate you. She didn't want to live like that. She didn't want anything to do with someone like Clint, and she hoped she never saw him again. That led her right back to the thought she never wanted to see Tate again either, and it hurt too much to bear. Just when love seemed so close she could touch it, it barely brushed her fingertips before it slipped away. She didn't get a man like Clint who tried to force love, or Tate who had handed it to him free and easy and then turned it away. Well, she couldn't make Tate love her, and she wouldn't keep offering him something he didn't want. She didn't know how to get over losing her best friend and the man she loved all of the same, but she'd find a way, because she couldn't endure a lifetime of feeling like this, heartbroken and alone. But that didn't mean that she would not grieve with a good long cry and under the covers and a gallon of ice cream and brownies. This kind of sad required copious amounts of chocolate. We are going to do 164 and 165. Did you forget to charge yours again? No, I can't find it. He accepted Declan's phone and hit the speed dial to call, and as he walked to the stables, he did not hear it ringing before the voicemail picked up. Maybe it's at the house. Until he went up there, he used Declan's phone to call Liz. Strange, it went right to voicemail. Hey, sweetheart, it's me. I lost my phone. Call me back at the ranch, number or Declan's. I can't wait to see you tonight. Missed you today. Tate handed the phone back to Declan. If she calls back, find me. I'm going to go check up the house on my phone and shower and then head over to see her. Tate, we need to talk about the ranch and prioritize what needs to be done. I hear you, ma'am, but I need to go see Liz. First Drake, and now you. Tate cocked his head and stared at Declan. What does that mean? A woman walks into your life and you ditch work for them and leave me to handle everything. I just spent all effing day out there working my butt off to make sure that you're doing things on your list. If you got something that needs to be done right this minute, I'll do it, but I'm worried about Liz. That damn ex of hers hasn't gone away quietly, and without my phone, I don't know if she has called today. Declan threw his hands up and let them fall. Fine, go check on her. I got this. He turned and walked down the stable alley back to the office. Tate nearly went after him, but Declan was under a lot of pressure, mostly because he shouldered the responsibility for the ranch, and had a hard time letting loose of the reins to someone else. But the need to talk to Liz outweighed Declan's concern about the ranch. They had been dealing with those for months now, and Declan could wait. His need to see Liz could not. He searched the house for his phone, and it came up empty. Even when he called it from the house phone to see if it'd ring in one of those rooms, he really couldn't believe that he lost it. He could have sworn that he tucked it in his front pocket of his jacket when he headed into the town this morning to pick up their order at the feed store. He remembered taking off his jacket before he headed in the store to pay for the order and help load it into the back of his truck. Maybe it fell out of his pocket while he was standing outside the door and tossed his jacket into the seat. He used the house phone and called Liz again and left another message. I'm heading over to see you right after I take a quick shower. See you soon. Why didn't she pick up? She had to be off work and home by now. He had hoped that she was driving out to see him, and that's why she didn't answer her phone. Whatever the reason, he had to go to her soon. They had a lot to talk about, their future and the next steps, which included them taking their relationship to the next level, because he couldn't stand another long and restless night dreaming about being with her. Shortening that phrase. Okay. I do want to read this part here so we can cover about what happened to his phone and where we're going with the story. So let me see how far deep this is going to take us. Okay, looks like to page 181. Okay, so we're starting at page 166. Liz jumped at the knock on her door. She barely had time to put her purse down and crack a beer open before someone intruded on what she hoped was going to be a quiet evening of drinking, sulking, and not talking to anyone. She put her hand on the lock and took it away. Before she just opened the door, she peeked through the peephole and studied this tall, dark-haired man. Who is it? She had no idea. Detective Wayne Valdez. I need to speak to Liz Scott about Aubrey Pittman. Who? She didn't recognize the man or the name. Pat, at the sandwich shop, said she saw you talking to Aubrey at lunch today. May I come in? Hold your badge up. Paranoid maybe, but she lived alone and she didn't take any chances. Sure enough, the guy had a badge and the credentials. She unlocked the door and stepped back to allow him to enter. He checked out her place in one long sweep from her living room into the bedroom, down the hall, and around the kitchen to her beer sitting on the dining room table behind her. What is this about? I did speak to a woman today, but I didn't know her name, and I never met her. Detective Valdez pulled a picture from his jacket inside the pocket. Do you recognize her? Liz had a bad feeling. Yes. Is she okay? The cops didn't just show up because of an innocent conversation between strangers. The detective didn't answer. If you didn't know her, then why are you having lunch together? I went to lunch alone, she clarified. Aubrey stopped by my table before she left. Pat said you spoke to a man before you spoke with Aubrey. Yes, that's right. Clint, my ex, saw me, sat down, and came over to talk. The detective's eyes narrowed. Everything about him went on alert. Clint Mayhew? That sparked her suspicions. A ripple of dread went through her. How did you know? He didn't answer that, but asked, was he already in the restaurant? She shrugged. I guess so, but I'm not sure. I didn't see him when he walked in. She thought about the text from Tate and added, I was distracted and upset. About what? She didn't want to share or cry in front of him. Does it matter? The detective's gaze sharpened. Maybe. Someone else knocked on her door. Excuse me. She turned her back to the detective and looked through the peephole again and spotted Tate. Go away, she yelled before the door. Surprise shone in his eyes before they narrowed. What? Let me in. She pressed her hand to the door and tried to tamp down the wave of sadness and rejection. We have nothing to say to each other. Leave. She took a step back to finish her conversation with the detective, but Tate walked right in that door. He looked from her to the detective and back. Who the hell is that? None of your damn business. Now get out. She pointed to the door. Tate genuinely looked shocked. The detective faced off with Tate. Maybe you should go. I have important business to discuss with Liz. Tate turned back to her. Who is he and why is he here? Liz sucked in a breath and let her drama with Tate go for now and introduced the two men. Tate McGrath, and this is Detective Valdez. He came to talk to me about a woman, Aubrey, who spoke to me at lunch today after she saw me with Clint. Tate stared down at her. What the hell were you doing with him? At this point, Tate had no say in who she spent time with anymore, though she appreciated what sounded like concern. I wasn't with him. We ran into each other at lunch. Resigned to that fact that Tate wouldn't leave until he was good and ready, she met the detective's direct gaze and asked what she didn't really want to know. What happened to Aubrey today? The detective delivered the devastating news. Her body was found by a hiker at the bottom of Lover's Leap. Shocked, her knees went weak. Tate caught her before she fell to the floor. He helped her sit in one of the dining room chairs. Who is Aubrey, and what does this have to do with Liz? It couldn't be. Liz just saw Aubrey a few hours ago. It had to be a mistake. But it wasn't. There was a cop in her condo questioning her. Aubrey was Clint's ex. She had a restraining order against him. He's been accused numerous times of harassment, and Aubrey had been concerned. Neighbors called in several domestic disturbances during their relationship. She and other past girlfriends never followed through, so he gotten away with the charges not sticking. The detective sighed out of his resignation that he couldn't fix the past. Tell me about your meeting with both of them today. She sucked in a breath to settle her nerves and grief over what happened to Aubrey, and spelled out the events as concisely as she could. I left my office around 12:15 for lunch and walked the 2 blocks to the deli, and I eat there often. Pat knows me. I placed my order and found a table. She's done the same many times. It never ended like this today. Clint approached my table. I don't know if he walked in after me or he was already there. The thought of him following her creeped her out and amped her paranoid thoughts of what else he'd done without her knowing. His sitting in the restaurant waiting for her creeped her out more. I've seen him watching me from a distance several times since we broke up. Angry lines marred Tate's already perturbed face. That's why you seem distant this week. Why didn't you say something? Because I didn't want him coming between us again, but he had, and she hated it. The detective wrote everything down. Did he know that you frequented that place? We met there for lunch a couple times when we dated. She focused on what happened and not Tate's presence and what he texted her at lunch. Clint was nice, comforting. The good guy act reminded me of the guy that I liked. She couldn't believe that she bought the conciliatory attempt to get back into her good graces. Fooled me once, but never again. Tate frowned. You think he played you? She reminded herself that she had her suspicions. I appreciated that he tried to make me feel better, but it didn't make me forget how he hurt me. Was there a physical altercation in the past? The detective asked. She hated remembering how scared she'd been. The echoes of the fear rippled through her. Yes, here at my condo. My neighbor stepped in. I made it clear to Clint we were over before that confrontation and again before he left that night. He's not the kind of guy who takes no for an answer. The detective scribbled more notes. What else about the conversation today? Nothing. He asked me if he could see me tonight. I told him I wasn't up for it. I don't ever want to reconcile with him. He left me thinking that maybe He left thinking that maybe we'd see each other soon. I didn't want to upset him after we had that nice conversation. I thought it was just best to leave it at that and move on. So much for leaving it in the past. Clint had no intention of letting her go. She rubbed her hands and up and down her arms to ward off the cold shiver of fear. The detective wasn't done with his questions. After Clint left, what happened with Aubrey? She walked up to the table and told me that everything that Clint says is a lie and that I should stay away from him. She told me that he ruined her for life and sent a recording of her in a compromising sexual situation to her coworkers. Did he ever record you? The deadpan look didn't ease the embarrassment of that question. She pressed her hand to her sour stomach. Oh, God, I hope not. Though she didn't want to think about her limited time with Clint, she thought back to those intimate moments, searching the memory for anything that seemed odd or like he'd been performing, but looking back only made her realize it seemed like a performance now. I suppose he could have recorded us without my knowledge. She swallowed back, that bile rising in her throat, and she shook off the eerie chill that raced through her. But we only had Boom Boom a couple of times. Not that it mattered, but she wanted Tate to know. Oh, who cared? That wasn't important right now. She wanted to put it all behind her, but Clint wouldn't let her. He kept coming back into her life and mucking it up. She took off the past and tried to stick to the here and now. Aubrey warned me to stay away from Clint. Even when she left, I appreciated that she said something, even though I already decided that Clint and I were never going to be a thing again. She sucked in a breath after that. After she left, I tossed my lunch and went back to work and tried to put Clint out of my mind, and then until I came home to this. The detective replaced his no-nonsense look with a sympathetic one. Have you heard from Clint since then? No, and I hope I never do again. Do you think that Clint killed Aubrey? Her mother received a text message around 12:40. I'm sorry, I love you. She left her car at a trailer's head at the lake, and it appears she walked up the Lover's Leap, and the detective left it to her to fill in the blanks. Do you seriously think she left the deli and killed herself? Liz didn't buy it, no way. Did she seem distraught or upset? It was obvious she feared Clint, enough that she warned me. She seemed determined to make sure Clint didn't hurt anyone else, but distraught? No. Nothing about the way she acted makes me think she was wanting to hurt herself or jump off a bridge. She shook her head. No, I just don't believe it. The detective nodded, and he felt the same way. After things got really bad with Clint and the video went out to her coworkers and friends, her mother said she did try to attempt suicide, pills, but she called her mom to say goodbye. The paramedics arrived to save her just in time. Liz felt so sorry for Aubrey and everything she endured. Sounds like a desperate cry for help after a traumatic event. Tate pressed the detective. You think Clint saw Aubrey and Liz talking and he kidnapped her and pushed her off a bridge? It sounded so far-fetched, yet she didn't know how far Clint would go. The detective closed his notebook. I can't prove it, but yes, I do. Her mother said things were good in her life. Aubrey liked her new job and made several new friends. Nothing about her recent history gives any slightest sign that she was depressed or contemplating suicide. I even went through the events of Aubrey's day. Everything seemed routine. She showed up at work on time, did her job, went to lunch. Her mother swore to me that Aubrey wouldn't kill herself that way. She was terrified of heights. Liz thought out loud. Clint probably found it poetic, tossing his lover over the bridge and convincing himself that she deserved it for not loving him enough. Anger, disgust drew lines across Tate's forehead. Have you spoken to Clint? The detective shook his head. I wanted to start with Aubrey's day, make sure that there was not anything else going on in her life, then make sure I didn't reach the wrong conclusion by getting caught up in her past. He fixed his gaze on her. It appeared that you were the last person to speak to her today. As soon as you mentioned Clint, I knew my suspicions were correct. I'll track him down and talk to him, but I don't anticipate it going anywhere. The guy is careful. I doubt we'll find any evidence of him in her car or at the bridge. But you never know. The car was wiped down, but they found new prints. We'll see if anything comes back from the lab. Until then, I'd say stay away from Clint from now on. If he's targeted you as his next obsession, well, I can only say that it won't end well. If he does anything to you, call the police. Make sure there's a record of it. Don't let him get away with hurting you the way he got away with all the others. Detective Valdez fished a card out of his pocket and held it out to her. That's it. That's all you got for her? Tate snatched the card and held it up. How is a warning and your number supposed to protect her from this psychopath? Frustration lit Detective Valdez's eyes. He took Tate's anger in stride. My hands are tied. I need more more than accusation and assumptions. Without evidence, I cannot arrest him. And he gets away with killing someone. The contempt and disgust in Tate's voice matched exactly how Liz felt. Tate was scared for her, but he didn't want anything to do with her, so, Tate, thanks for your concern, but I'll handle this. Just go. That's the second time you've tried to kick me out for no reason. What is wrong with you? She turned her pointed finger into her chest. Me? She let out a collective emotion fly. After what you did? You want to know what's wrong with me? Tate's eyes went wide. Whoa, what did I do? After all these years, everything we've shared, you don't have the decency to say it to my face. You send me a text message. He held out his hands. Say what? She shook her head. I'm not doing this with you again. You can't say that what you said and just expect that we'll still be friends. His hands dropped and his eyes went soft. We are more than friends. I don't know what happened between last night and you not picking up when I called you twice today, but whatever it is, just tell me. If I upset you, I'm sorry. She stood to face off with him because she couldn't take this sitting down. Upset me? You send me those texts, then you show 'em up here like nothing happened? Tears roughened her voice. Hey now, hold up. I lost my phone this morning. I tried to call you from Deacon's phone to let you know. Rational thoughts broke through her hurt and anger. You lost your phone? Yeah, I had it this morning when I drove into town to pick up an order. But after that, I can't remember where I put it, or maybe I dropped it and didn't realize it. She crossed her arms across her fluttering belly. Did you text me around lunchtime? I told you I had to work out on the property. No cell service. Not that I had my phone to call or text you. What? What's going on? The plea in his voice made her believe him. She went to her purse, grabbed her phone, pulled up the text, and turned the phone to show him. Rage filled his eyes as he read, No effing way. I did not send this. No. He took her hands in his and stared into her eyes. I would never break up with you via a text. He touched his forehead to hers. The anger in his eyes dissipated into a plea. No, Liz, I swear to you that was not me. Could it have been Clint? The detective asked, sparking a whole new round of suspicions. She and Tate both turned to him. Liz spoke first. Why would you think that? If he wants you back and Tate is in his way. She filled in the rest with the dreadful thoughts. Who does something like that? She glanced up at Tate. But how did he get your phone? Tate shrugged. I hardly ever lock my truck door. He could have walked right up to the truck, taken it out of my jacket without me or anyone knowing. I didn't think to call you until I finished work and was head back out into the stables. That was late this afternoon. I wanted to make plans with you for tonight. You knew I'd be out of reach, but something nagged at me when I couldn't find my phone. I tried you twice. I didn't answer because I didn't think we had anything left to say. He brushed his thumb over her cheek. You mean so much to me, Liz. She leaned into his palm and took in the warmth and comfort of his skin against hers. Relief swept through her so heady it made her feel a little buzzed and giddy. He still wanted her. Are you sure that you lost your phone? The detective broke into their moment. I didn't send those texts. Tate's venomous left her with almost no doubt that he did not do it. The detective held up his hand to ward off Tate's further denial. I just want to be sure he took your phone and he didn't clone it or something. I can't find it anywhere. I'm usually careful about keeping it on me in case of emergency. I tried to track it, but nothing came up on my computer. Either the battery is dead or someone turned it off. Liz didn't think so. More likely, if Clint stole it and sent those texts, he got rid of it. The detective nodded his agreement. Tate got a far-off look. I never noticed his car or him. Liz voiced her suspicions. He had to be following you, too. Otherwise, how did he know you were in town? Tate sighed. Why make it look like I broke up with you? He had to know we'd eventually talk and figure out that I didn't do it. He might have hoped that she'd believe it long enough for it to drive a wedge between you, the detective suggested. He's been doing that from the start, making her think that my intentions were BS to begin with. Tate stared down at her and her heart just broke. I'm sorry he's made me question you and us. These last few days have been wonderful. She went right to his arms. God, it felt so good to be wrapped up in his strength, protection, and love. Because she did believe that he loved her. They had been friends far too long for him not to deeply feel for her. She believed that love had grown. I won't let him tear us apart. Tate hugged her close. It's not going to happen. He wanted to protect her just like he said. She was meant too much to him. Just like with Tate's stolen phone, you received the text message. There's no evidence it was Clint, even if we did think it was him, and I don't think it was an accident. He showed up at lunchtime just after Liz got those messages. The detective had only had bad news for them. Whatever you do, don't confront him about your phone, your texts. He'll just deny it anyway. Use your anger and your refusal to see him an excuse to come after one or both of you again. The best thing you can do is nothing. Engaging with him will only set him off. Aubrey got away only by cutting off all communication, switching jobs, and not association with anyone who knows him. And so he found a new target, Liz. Let's hope that Liz dating you deters Clint from taking this further. He killed someone who warned Liz away from him. Exactly, so maybe she's not the one in immediate danger. The detective hinted towards another target. Her heart stopped for a split second as that hit her. You think he might go after Tate? Women have always been Clint's victims, but I wouldn't put anything past him now. He's crossed the line. He beat Aubrey several times while they were together, but never too severely. If he took her from the deli, drove her to the bridge, and pushed her off all without being seen or leaving evidence, that's cold even for him. Tate went rigid beside her. You mean it's an escalation? He wanted Aubrey to pay for interfering with his relationship with Liz. Tate swore. Aubrey spoke to Liz. I'm Liz's best friend and the guy who took her away from him. The detective's lips pressed into a tight line. Let's just hope he doesn't start thinking of you as in that way. I think it's a little late for that, Tate snapped. The detective headed out the door and turned back before he walked out. I'll update you with any relevant information. Call if you need help. Report anything if he does. And he turned to Tate. Report your missing phone. You never know. Maybe he kept it and we'll get him for that. Possession of stolen property, big effing deal. It could be the thing that trips him up. You never know. The detective left with a little hope anything would touch Clint, let alone put him behind bars. She went to the door and locked it, leaned back against it and stared at Tate. I am sorry. You didn't sign up for any of this. Are you kidding me? You think I'll let him mess up what we have because he's an idiot who can't accept it when a woman doesn't want him? He wants to control you, possess you, and since he doesn't and can't have you, he thinks that he can manipulate you back to him. When that doesn't work, he's going to try and force you and hurt you again. Tate grabbed the back of his neck and squeezed. I can't stand to think of anything happening to you. The worst thing that happened to me today was thinking that I lost you. Tate held his arms out. She walked right into them again and held on tight to his arms wrapped around her. You're never going to lose me. He kissed her on the head. That's twice we've broken up, and I didn't even know about it until it was too late. She leaned back and smiled up at him. He stared down at her and traced his fingers along the side of her face. His eyes filled with a mix of deep emotion she couldn't even name. It could have been you he pushed off that bridge. A cold chill ran up her spine. She couldn't deny it. Clint had to be out of his mind, unstable, volatile, unafraid to do whatever he thought needed to be done to get what he wanted. The chilling realization only made her believe that even more that life was short and she didn't want to miss anything. What are we waiting for, Tate? He leaned down and pressed a soft, tempting kiss on her lips and had her rising on tiptoe to get closer as he pulled back and stared deep into her eyes. Pack a bag. Come home with me. It's not safe here for you right now, and I need you here with me. Or I need you with me. I know that I was stupid, and I can't wait to see how... I know I was too stupid to see how much you mean to me, but now that I know, I can't lose you, and I won't let him hurt you. Not stupid, just a whole lot of stubborn. She smiled up at him, hoping teasing him would take the edge off. The rumble of his chuckle vibrated against her belly. She pressed to his. Thank God you're just as stubborn, and held out for me to come around and realize everything I ever wanted was right in front of me. Tears filled her eyes, and Tate pressed his hand to her cheek. Don't cry. I don't think I can take it. They're happy tears, though, and I love you. Let's see how far this next section goes. Well, I guess as long as we can get to page 200, that's a good stopping point. So here's page 196. I don't see how where I was this morning has anything to do with Aubrey. And Liz is your ex. The detective abrupt switch from Aubrey to Liz threw him. That's right. Based on the conversation you had with her at lunch, or are you hoping the two of you get back together? That's none of your business. I'd say it's a no, especially after I saw her with Tate. The cop gave him a look. Clint fumed. He broke up with her. That's what she thought too, until he explained that he lost his phone this morning. Crap. They tied the phone to him, or so they thought. Let me guess, he had a change of heart, came up with some BS story about losing his phone to cover, then he pleaded with her to understand and take him back. He rolled his eyes. That guy has been stringing her along for years. If she can't see this is just another game he's playing to keep her tied to him, that's too bad for her. He's the reason we broke up. He doesn't want her to be with someone who really cares about her. He just wants to keep her all to himself. Aubrey's mother said that's how you treated Aubrey, like something that belonged to you. No one understood this relationship, his dedication to first Aubrey and now Liz. I tried to be there for Aubrey, to protect her from herself. In the end, I realized I couldn't help someone who didn't want to be helped. Someone who didn't think she needed help. Someone who didn't dedicate herself to being better, and everything he needed to her to be the way he'd been for everything to her. Do you think Liz needs your help? I tried to tell her that if Tate really wanted her, he'd have done something about it long before now. She's a beautiful, kind, loving woman who deserves someone who loves her, and not someone who just wants her sole attention but doesn't want to give her things she needs. You want to be that guy. She knows that. Tate messed up that for us, but we talked today, and she knows that I still care. I want her to be happy. From what you said, it appears Tate is still playing games. I saw them together. Looked to me like Tate was all in. That ticked him off, but he tried not to show it. That's what he wants her to think. His well-laid plans fell apart too quickly. He needed a better tactic to prove to Liz that she made a mistake with Tate. He needed to help her see that before Tate hurt her again. So where were you this morning? Getting ready for work, driving to the office. Anyone see you during that time? He crossed his arms and leaned against the door frame. I live alone. What time did you arrive to work? He shrugged. About 9. Do you always start that late? My boss doesn't care when I get there, so long as I put in my 8 hours. Now, if you don't mind, my dinner's getting cold. I have just a few more questions. Look, I'm sorry Aubrey took her life, but it has nothing to do with me. I've been out of her life for a long time. I moved on, even if she hadn't. With Liz, good night. He shut the door in the officer's face, let him think what he wanted, but Clint had no reason to fear that he was a suspect, other than the fact he was connected to Aubrey and Liz. The cop had nothing but suspicion. If he had any evidence, their talk would have been down at the police station. Clint had been careful and used Aubrey's past and crazy threats to hurt herself against her. He smiled as he walked back into the kitchen. The cop couldn't prove a damn thing, not even if stealing Tate's phone and texting Liz. The grin faded to an angry frown. That idiot Tate talked his way out of it and got back together with Liz. He made Liz believe that Clint had sent the texts. Well, just like he had with that cop, he'd make sure that Liz would doubt Tate once again. She'd see Tate as a fraud and come back to Clint where she belonged. So as you can see, sometimes things are not as they appear. Sometimes people with evil intentions will hurt good people. And that was what I've taken away from this book for the most part. But that's the first 200 pages I want to share with you. The ones that I've marked off anyway. We've got half a book to go, and we will do the other half tomorrow night, because I want to read from the cookbook that I got today, which is interesting, because I never knew that you could cook flowers in a salad, or that they would give any type of flavor off. So I want to share that with you. So please don't go anywhere.